But now let's spend a few minutes talking about grace and a closer look at your wonderful, wonderful description of grace as gift, the personality of God. But that implies receptivity, doesn't it, Tom?
Yes, it does. When I think back on my days as a parent of young children, I know how often I made mistakes as a parent. For example, I cannot believe that I got on a plane to go give a speech one time instead of going to the father-daughter banquet at the Campfire Girls. I can't believe I did that. But now my daughter, who is in her 30s, sent me a birthday card saying, "You're the best dad any daughter could ever have." And that's grace. I don't merit that, but I receive it with gratitude.
Tom, you know, your message really spoke to me, having had a couple of brushes with mortality.
Yes.
And
yes.
You learn how fragile life is, and you
Yes.
learn how it really is a gift moment by moment. You know, how do you think someone can come to that kind of an understanding without having it all sort of put on the altar, jeopardized and at risk? How does a person perfectly healthy, sitting pretty comfortable, understand how delicate it all is?
That's right. When we do encounter something serious, it knocks the props out from under us, and we recognize that we have not been as self-sufficient as we thought. And I think sometimes lesser experiences in life knock the props out one at a time. We have an upsetting day at work, or we maybe lose a job, or we have an argument in our marriage, or some crisis happens that lets us know that if there were not forgiveness and kindness, mercy and grace, life wouldn't be worth living. It exposes that vulnerable nerve, I think.
And it's also implied that even though it's all fragile, it's all hanging on God, we're supposed to dare. We're supposed to take risks. We're supposed to spend it all.
Grace does not create passivity,
Right.
not in the least. When you recognize that everything is a gift, you seize that gift and maximize it. And as a matter of fact, you become a gift-giving person yourself.
And it's a gift that comes at the least expected moments.
Oh, that's right.
There's a wonderful line out of Passage to India with Peggy Ashcroft as Mrs. Moore, and she says, as everything is shattering around her, life rarely gives us what we think appropriate. Nevertheless, adventures do occur, though not punctually. So, I mean,
that's beautiful.
That is good.
Yeah.
Isn't that profoundly theological?
Yeah, absolutely. That there is an intrinsic ingredient of surprise in grace. It comes at a time we didn't expect it, through people we didn't expect, and in ways we never counted on.
I have to ask you, Tom, what is your own personal encounter? You told us about the wonderful note from your daughter, but along your journey spiritually?
I think I'm in the ministry because of grace. I was pre-med in college and was headed to medical school. And there was in the town where my college was a minister who was standing tall for civil rights. This was during the civil rights movement. So an all-white congregation, a white pastor. And with great gentleness, he was giving his congregation the gift of courage and standing tall for this. And they were beating him up about it and rejecting him. He never paid them back. And I thought, there's a life marked by grace, and I would like to be like that. And so an imitation of that kind of gracefulness in him has become a guiding light for me in my own ministry.
So you're saying it's contagious.
It is contagious. It is contagious.
As a matter of fact, we'd be better off if we're sort of an epidemic of grace. And if Christians, if people of faith everywhere allowed themselves to let that gift flow through them to their brothers and sisters.
Yeah, I think we underestimate the power of one grace-filled person in a sea of people who need grace, having the capacity to model that and to allow it to become contagious for others. It's a light on a hill.
Truly.
The reality of divine mystery that transcends time and space. I mean, grace as sacrament and coming to us, as you referred to in your talk, in ways that are not always connected with our understanding of sacredness or faith or even sacrament. Looking at a film or reading a poem or saying the Hail Mary together.
That's true. That's true.
Well, that's right. Grace is not confined inside the walls of a church. what happens in a church or a synagogue or a community of faith is that there are these paradigmatic experiences that operate like lenses that allow us to see grace everywhere, happening everywhere.
And do you think there's a way that ministers can sort of enlighten their congregations to see grace as the fuel that can ignite their congregation, ignite the faith within people? I mean, it's sort of an ephemeral concept. It doesn't get preached about much.
That's right. I think in good preaching this can happen, but I think good ministry also recognizes that grace is popping out there in the community, and it just points at it and says, look, look,
It's
everywhere.
a sensitizing role, isn't it, for communicators of the faith? And of course, you at Candler School of Theology at Emory University are doing this every day in your classroom, teaching preaching, aren't you?
I hope that we are, and the best ministry recognizes we're floating in a sea of God's grace. Look, look, look. That's the first word of ministry.
How are you communicating this to your students? I mean, I know that you said to us earlier that most of your students are young people.
They are young. They are young. What we know, I teach preaching, and what we know is that people learn how to preach like they learn how to parent, by watching other people do it.
Interesting.
And so in addition to doing the scales in class, I mean, we are teaching some techniques and things in class, modeling it. My students sometimes say they can't tell the difference between a lecture and a sermon in my class, and I am flattered when they say that.
That's good. That's good.
As a son of the South, do you think you learn about grace differently in that little country church that you grew up in?
I don't think grace is different in the South than it is anywhere else, but I think it's...
I mean, the way you are sensitized.
Yeah, I think the culture mediates it. And I have lived through the recent struggles of the South, and I think anyone who has lived through that in the South has seen powerful examples of grace. I live in the town where Martin Luther King Jr. is from. We've seen it embodied.
I know that. And you know the origin of Amazing Grace, the hymn, having been written by a captain of a slave trader, who once he saw the light said, I can't do this anymore.
That's right.
I once was blind, but now I see.
That's right. Once you have experience of grace, you can't take advantage of other human beings.
That's right. Things change.
That's right.
Everything changes.
That's right.
For love.
Absolutely.
For love. Thank you so much, Tom. This has been
pleasure.
so enlightening and so inspiring. Thank you so much.
Good to be here.